Coming to you from an office cubicle that doubles as a confessional booth where deadlines meet deep life questions. Today we're diving into the messy tension between calling and career. Is your job just a paycheck, or is it your purpose? And what about the space in between, the job you do because it pays the bills, while your real calling lives somewhere else? We'll share about how each of us found what feels like a calling, with some funny missteps along the way, I might add, the advice that shaped our careers, and why even a calling comes with stuff that you might not love. And then we'll pivot. Is it okay to have a career that isn't your calling? And finally, we'll tackle the big question. If work isn't just about money, how do you balance it all? Buckle up. This is the All In Podcast. Bada bing, bada boom. Bing, bada bing, bada bing, bada boom. Bada bing, bada boom. John Michael, Jose, we've known each other for a long time. We've worked together for a long time,
unfortunately.
And I think that we've all loved working with each other. And I think that we've all loved the different jobs that we've had over the last 10 years of our career. But today what I'm interested in is that if you had to build a Mount Rushmore of jobs, what would you put on that list, or that mountain, you'd say?
It's a great question.
Bartender.
Where?
So I'm not talking like, I don't want to work at some grungy, kind of dive bar. I want to work at a high level cocktail bar. And
like a fancy
upscale $16 to $20 for an old fashioned.
Wow.
The only issue I have is, one, I don't own enough bow ties. Two, I don't own suspenders. And three, my arms are devoid of tattoo sleeves. And so in terms of resume, it's not super strong. The only strong part is my margaritas, which could give me an opportunity there. But I just see these bartenders at these high-level spots, and they're like taking the simple syrup bottle and tossing it in the air, catching it, and pouring all in the same motion.
That's swagger.
They don't use the jigger because they just know how long a 2-ounce pour takes. And it's so cool. And they tend to be like the most interesting people. They've like lived a lot of life, traveled a bunch. They'd be a great friend to have in terms of hosting a party. So bartender at a high-end speakeasy cocktail bar, I'm taking that as my presidential Mount Rushmore.
I like that.
How many people do you think work at a place like that wear backwards floaters?
Not many.
Just me. Just me. It's for the hair, man. If I put it all the way on, my hair is flat for the rest of the day. Yeah. I need volume.
Jose?
Well, I think the easy answer is from the years, 1998 to 2015, being a point guard for the LA Lakers. Right?
I love where you're going with this.
I think Kobe Bryant had the best job in the world. No, but Mount Rushmore of jobs I'd want to have. Are we talking realistic or unrealistic?
I'm talking...
Because unrealistic, I want to be James Bond. Like, what a job,
It's a movie character.
Well,
it's a real life person, dude.
But it's a job that people have.
You work for, what is it, M16, M5?
Yeah, you work for AR.
Your mission,
AR-15,
should you choose to accept it.
And I would gladly accept it.
You're not good looking enough to be
like,
James Bond.
I don't know where... I'm going to let that slide, John Michael. I don't know where this would land, but in feasibility. But it's just, I feel like it's always been so cool in the back of my head of like, man, what would it be like to work for the CIA? I think it'd be such a... And you have so many unique... You don't have to be undercover. I can be over the covers. Yeah. I don't mind.
That's fair.
I don't mind.
I can be over the covers.
I just think that'd be such a cool job. Now, I'm sure it would be awful for family life and like stress and the things that you learn. I'm sure it'd be awful. But in terms of like, what a cool job. It'd be a CIA.
We had some neighbors that were undercover operatives for the CIA.
Did they tell you that?
Well,
Because if they told you that, I don't think they were.
no, they
It's in the
their
neighborhood-
whole
the
thing was that they
neighborhood
were
dir-
both pilots, and they traveled a lot, and then they were really close with these other neighbors that we had, and they let it slip that they were actually CIA agents, and I just don't why they were living in my gated community in Irving, Texas. I don't know.
Protection, obviously.
That gate will stop a lot of people.
So speaking of being unqualified for the jobs that we want that we put on Mount Rushmore, hear me out on this. College football strength and conditioning coach.
Oh, yeah.
Would-
You also don't fit the bill.
I
for
don't
that.
fit the bill for that, but watching these SEC shows on Netflix or just like the college football documentaries, like just to be in the room, I'm like, you're a culture shaper. You're running around yelling and screaming. You get to be on the sidelines for the games. You know, you're not the head coach. There's not a lot of pressure on you.
Yes, you don't have to deal with all the crazy stuff that comes with being a head coach.
yeah.
Like
the
if
hours or
you
anything like
lose, no one's calling for your job.
Yeah.
unless you're at a program where your starting quarterback has season-ending injury 5 years in a row.
That's Joe Burrow.
So I will say, Texas A&M strength and conditioning coach Tommy Moffitt, I think his name is, doesn't fit the bill at all. Like when you think of college strength and conditioning coach, you're thinking kind of like 30, 35, probably wears a whoop, probably has kind of great facial hair, thick jawline. Tommy Moffitt's like 65, but he has that voice, kind of like an Ed Orgeron type voice, where it sounds so raspy that when he talks, you're like, this guy's been through some stuff. Yeah.
Go Tigers.
Like the Tommy Moffitt, he's been through some stuff. You just listen to him talk.
Yeah. I think that's a great pool. That's
College football, baby.
yeah.
So all of us are in a job right now. We work for a missionary organization called Focus. And I think, when we first said yes to be missionaries on the college campus, right when we graduated college, we really felt like this was a particular calling from God. And then as we have progressed, we've taken different roles, but still feel called to be a part of this, mission-oriented organization that we're in. And so I'd love to hear just how did you guys come to what you're doing right now? How did you come to the decision that this was actually a calling from God to do what you're doing in your life right now?
I mean, I don't want to just push aside the spiritual realm when it comes to a calling, but I will say, I don't know about you guys, it wasn't like God came down to me and said, I want you to work for the church. Frankly, it was just kind of a rational thought process, which I think sometimes some people are tempted to think that, in a career, it has to be this kind of divine calling. God comes down, knocks you off your Toyota Corolla on the highway, and that's how you know. But for me, it was just, I respect the men who work for this organization. I see their character. I also see the value of what they're doing, and so I want to do it. It wasn't super complicated. It wasn't super divine in nature. It was just kind of this logical, if A is true, which is I respect the men that work for this company. If B is true, in that I want to be like those men, then C needs to be true, which is that the transitive property, if A equals B and C equals B, then A equals C. I want to be like those men, and so
you
I
almost
work
lost
for
me
them.
there, but I think you pulled
Yeah.
it back in.
I pulled it back to you.
Similar to John Michael, I think just the practicality and the logic. And mine was maybe a little more selfish in nature, which was that I always wrestled with what comes after death. And I don't mean as in like an eternal perspective or like where are we going, more of like practically here on the ground what comes after I die. And this was a question that I wrestled with a lot. And I think at least while I'm still young, one thing that someone once said to me was, how are people going to remember you when you die? And I remember thinking like, okay, if I go do this one thing, that's not what I'm currently doing with Focus, and I were to die like when I was in college or recently post-college, my mom would have just been like, oh, like he was a great person with a bright future. Versus if I were to do this, how would people remember me? And again, is that selfish? Probably. But I really was following that logic of like, okay, how can I leave the best legacy possible behind? That's kind of what led me to this place. Yeah, that's kind of roundabout way of saying legacy was something that was important for me.
Yeah. And now we're all, 8-9 years in, and it's become a career. We've all taken different jobs, along the way. So what would you say is there a difference between a career and a calling? Can you be in a career that's not a calling? Can you have a calling that's not your career? What's the difference between having a career and having a calling? Or is there?
I don't know, but I think the answer is there is a difference.
But you don't know what it is.
No, I'm having a hard time defining it. But I'm like, yeah, I think I can go work a job in sales, and that's my career. But it's not my calling. My calling is to be a father and a good husband and raise my kids in the faith and continue to be holy and help bring people to heaven. But it doesn't have to be my career and vice versa. Does that make sense? I don't know.
I think about Vatican II, which for those not familiar would be like a kind of a gathering of top Catholics where they get together and talk about some important topics that are affecting people. It's called Ecumenical Council, but they talked a lot about the laity, which the laity is just any person who doesn't have a collar around their neck. And so what they said in Vatican II was that the job of the laity is to renew the temporal order, which sounds really complicated, but basically what it just means is to bring the ideas of God into everyday life. That would be renewing the temporal order. So I think your career can be an avenue to which your calling is brought into the world. However, your career doesn't have to be the calling in and of itself. So with the sales example, it's a great example, right? Your calling's not to sell a product, but the calling could be to build up those around you through the edification of quality work in the workplace,
right?
Through the net of excellence in the workplace, through the apostolate of being the best guy to work with in the office. And so there's this higher level calling, which is to build up and to bring the things of God into the day-to-day workplace, into the day-to-day life. But the career is an opportunity to do that. I would say the career is like the lane on a highway of your calling.
You mentioned, Vatican II, and I have just a short quote here from one of the documents that came out of there. It's called Lumen Gentium. It's one of the conciliar documents, I think is what you call it.
Wow.
Document that came from
I don't know what language you guys are speaking.
Okay, well, here's just what it says. I'm just going to read a brief part of it, but it says, "The laity, by their vocation, seek the kingdom of God by engaging in temporal affairs," like you were saying, John Michael, "and by ordering them according to the plan of God." They live in the world, and they bring God into the world by bringing God into their ordinary circumstances. And so, right now, I am feeling called to take a short break. And we'll be back right after this.
Hey, this is Clayton from the All In Podcast. What if I told you that God was moving in places that you've never even imagined? That's exactly what you'll see in the new series Where Love Leads, a 5-episode miniseries brought to you by Focus. Travel with us across the world to see people whose lives have been transformed by Christ and see the power of mission come alive. Tap the link or scan the QR code to watch Where Love Leads now in the Seek Replay app.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the differences between a career and a calling. What would you say to the person right now that is in a career that just doesn't like it at all and doesn't see their calling within the career or the job that they're in currently right now?
I think to that individual, I would ask them, like, what do you feel like your calling is? And I think there's kind of an objective calling that every person has, which is probably articulated by that quote that you shared, the sanctification of the day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. But then I would argue that there's probably a subjective calling in people's lives. Like, I feel as if I have a unique calling to two different populations. One is the special needs community, the parents of children with special needs. I feel like I have a calling to them to articulate to them that life is difficult, but it is worth it. There's an interesting statistic that families who have kids with special needs are 7 times more likely to experience divorce than a family who doesn't. Because when you go through suffering, it either brings you together or it breaks you apart. So I think that's one individual subjective calling I have. I think the second subjective calling I have is just to young men. I feel like all of us have a kind of a unique gifting, unique skill set, unique life experience to where we understand the experiences of 16 to 35-year-old men in maybe a particular way that God has kind of anointed us with, or an ability to relate to them, not necessarily in our perfection, but more so in our weakness. So to that individual, I would just say, like, what are the things that you feel passionate about? What are the kind of subjective callings that you have? What are the skill sets that you bring? Maybe you're like really good at coding. Like, the calling could be to use that skill to brighten the opportunity to come into relationship with others, or a relationship with God, like Saint Carlo Acutis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting what you said, John Michael. Just, you feel called to the special needs community because you have a son with special needs. It's not as if, there's some bright light from the sky that told you, hey, you should give yourself to the special needs community. It's just you were looking at the ordinary circumstances of your life and saying, this is a place where I feel like I could really serve and give myself to, And, for myself, we, quote unquote calling, I felt like that we received within the past year was we were living out here in Denver, Colorado, where a lot of our close friends are. But there are some things going on with family back home. My mother-in-law is sick. My mom has a mental illness. She has dementia. And so for us as a family, we were driving with our 3 boys 16, 17 hours, 7-8 times a year to drive home from Colorado to go visit family, because we wanted to be with them. And there was just this really kind of natural decision, I guess, that was made, where it's like, yeah, you could say we feel, we didn't use the term we feel called to move back to Texas, but it was just like, this is obviously the decision that we need to make for our family. That's just apparent because of the circumstances that are in our life.
And I love that example, because since I know you, I know that calling affected your career, which is a great example. I'm wondering if you could actually share that portion of the calling to move back to family. Now I need to adjust my career in accordance with that calling.
Yeah, well, I was working in a role where most of my teammates were primarily based in Denver, and then when we moved back to Texas, it was just clear that role was not going to continue to work long term, and so I pivoted, and I still work for the same organization, working for Focus, but I pivoted into a different role where I felt like I could be still make an impact. So I took a look at, like, okay, what are my skill sets? What are my giftings? What do I like to do? Where do I feel like I could make a difference in this organization that's going to also fit the needs that my family has? And so I took a different role in Major Gifts fundraising, and it wasn't just some like calling that necessarily came in prayer. I prayed about it, and I thought about it, and I asked God, okay, God, where could I be best used? I wanted to make sure that, I wasn't just making a decision out of, my emotions, or out of fear, or out of, grasping for security in different ways, but just like where's going to be the best fit for my family, and where's going to be the best fit where I can still make the impact that I want to make. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well said. Well said. And I think, for going back to this individual who, has the job that they don't love, but struggling to find the calling within that, the reality is there could be a situation where you feel like you actually need to make a shift. You actually need to make a career change to better align yourself with that calling that you may have. There also may be people where the calling is to stay in that career because it allows for you to have a better experience outside of the workplace, like in your example, that, based on the situation of a family, based on the situation of finances, the calling may be to support your family, and the career may just have to be a little boring in the immediate to achieve the long-term result of achieving that calling.
That kind of leads me to another question, is that with a career comes this little thing called money, and different jobs pay different amounts. Different industries and sectors within the economy pay different amounts. And so how do you balance, within your career, the pursuit of more money versus the pursuit of, where are my gifts and skills, and where could I feel like I can make an impact and a difference?
Gosh, I would love to know. Because I mean, naturally, I think maybe not naturally. I love money, right? I love like nice things. I love these, and it's like this is a question that I struggle with, and maybe not my current role, but for the future, right? Of where is the balance? Like I would love one day to have a country club membership. Those cost a lot of money.
How much are country club memberships?
Depends on the country club. I mean, they range. You live in a
There's
country
a
club
range.
growing up, but
As the two guys
range.
wearing polos in the room,
There's a
give
huge
me a range.
I mean,
Well, so there's with a country club membership, typically first of all, there's different tiers.
You're
so you
kidding.
can have a social membership, you can have a tennis membership. So the social just lets you get in. The tennis membership lets you get in and play tennis. And then there's the junior executive membership, which is
This sounds like an airline
the
program.
membership that you it's a full membership where you have the social things, the tennis things, and golf, but it's before you turn 39. And then there's the full membership, which is the same thing as the junior executive membership, but
once
you're
you're over the age
over
of 40.
39, you're 40. And so then the payment is usually there's some sort of an initiation fee. You pay a down payment, if you will, and then you pay a monthly fee.
I mean,
after that.
there are
But
crazy ones. There are affordable ones, right? Where it's like $2K entry fee with like
2K entry fee, $150
$300
a month. Yeah, $200 a month.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
and then
affordable.
there's like
$500,000
yeah.
initiation fee. Yeah, it gets crazy.
And you pay that one time,
You pay that up front, and then you pay multiple
your
thousands per
monthly
month.
or annual fee.
Yeah.
on
And then
top of what you spend there.
and then a lot of these places too, they have restaurants and bars and things on property, obviously, and so then they have on top of your initiation fee, and then on top of your monthly fee, you also have a minimum spend. So like you need to spend $200 at the club per month on food or drink or stuff at the pro shop, and if you don't spend it, they're just going to charge you $200 anyways.
And so maybe I'm saying that I'd like to have one because, it's so out of reach that I'm like, that'd be nice. But it's like things like that, right? I'd love to have a really nice house where I can host people. I can do what, I'm excited about with my family and bring other people into that. So it's like, I want to have money. I want to pursue money. But what's the line there? And I have no clue.
Could we? I might make a bit of a bold take here, that the pursuit of money is not inherently bad.
Keep going.
The pursuit of money is not inherently bad.
I think I'm out, but keep going.
I don't have anything else. That was just
Well,
the
you
bold
need
take.
money.
But I think the pursuit of money, like if I am just pursuing money, that's bad. If I'm pursuing excellence,
I disagree.
I don't know.
I disagree.
if I'm
Well, I think
pursuing excellence, if I'm pursuing providing for my family, if I'm pursuing a job that really fits all these things that are good, and money comes with it, I think that's fine. I don't know.
Well, sometimes I think you need to make financial decisions for your family. I don't think when we're saying the pursuit of money isn't necessarily a bad thing. What we're saying is, it also requires, if you're just focused on the money aspect, that can be dangerous unless you're in a position where it's like, hey, actually, I've got a growing family. I've got, 2, 3 kids, and I'm in a job where money is really, really tight. I either need to talk to my employer and see how can I figure out a raise? What does my career path look like? Or I need to figure out what other things do I need to be doing in order to provide for my family and meet the needs of my family as well. Is that kind of what you're saying, John Michael?
Well, the Bible would potentially disagree with my bold take.
You've heard of
my
good friend Tim?
Old Timmy. Yeah, what does old Timmy say?
He says the root of all evil is money. Money is the root of all
The love of
But
money
I
is the
don't
root of-
understand that.
I would say there's probably a translation issue there, and it's the root of all evil is Bitcoin. And we lose a little bit of translation from the Greek to the English there. And so we've poorly translated it as money. But in reality, what Timmy was saying is Ethereum, Dogecoin, that's the root of all evil. But fiat currency is not the root of all evil.
No, but I agree with what you're saying. It's like there are times where we practically need to sit down and think about money, and make decisions based off of that. But again, even the way you said it was like because of my family. That's, I think, the difference versus just money for money's sake.
That's
Like,
that's a good
if I'm
distinction.
just pursuing money, that's, I would say, is bad. But because you're not pursuing money, you're pursuing other things. And money might be necessary to get there.
You're pursuing the life that you want for your family. But then again, I think you gotta sometimes you gotta keep it in check a little bit.
You gotta be
I want
practical.
a really nice country club membership for my family, but that doesn't mean that I need to uproot myself from the job or the career that I have currently in order to fit that.
Right.
So you have to be especially discerning probably in those circumstances. So
I think I would love to have kind of a Mount Rushmore of guys to have on the podcast is Arthur Brooks.
Yep.
So I don't know if you guys have read any of his stuff, listened to any of his talks. So he's a Harvard professor of leadership and happiness at the Kennedy School. He also was classically trained in the French horn as a young man, studied in Europe and music. He's written a variety of books. Probably his most popular is co-authored with Oprah Winfrey, actually. And he's kind of this guru of happiness. What's funny, though, is many people, he's kind of a secular prophet in a lot of ways. What a lot of people don't know is he's actually a devout Catholic. So he attends the Mass every single morning. He was at our conference, our yearly conference, Seek, and I actually would see him every single morning in the gym at 5 a.m. Dude is ripped, like 65 years old, and could outbench any 25-year-old in the gym. He's also a fellow whoop wearer, Clayton, so that's how you know. But he talks a lot about these ideas, and he makes this kind of bold statement that everyone is an entrepreneur. And you're not necessarily building a business, you're building the startup of your life. And so you get to make decisions as the entrepreneur of your life about where to invest, about where to take debits and credits in your life, because you're building the life that you want to live. And so I think to that point, he draws on that reality and pulls it out to say you are in control of your career. It's your life. And so you need to build a life that you don't want to run away from. You need to build a life that you're excited to live every single day.
Mm-hmm. Right, but yes. And I like what he said, work is just work. Work is work.
He talks about work as being inherently sanctifying, which is a word that means to make pure. Sanctifying comes from this idea of like a fire. When you have a fire, it kind of refines the things around it. You can think about putting an iron rod, and the fire actually refines that iron rod to make it malleable. And so he's talking about work as an aspect where you can sanctify yourself, but also sanctify the work in what you're doing.
Then maybe that wasn't what I was going for, but it reminded me of sometimes your work isn't your life. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's okay. Like sometimes your job just isn't that deep. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I hear this a lot, and I've struggled with this too, of like, how does my job fit into my calling? And I don't know exactly what part of the quote it was that reminded me of like, sometimes your work is not your life. And it's okay for that to be the case. Sometimes work is just work. Right? I talk with my wife about this a lot. She's currently a project manager at some tax firm. She doesn't do anything with taxes, but she's telling me, she's like, yeah, I'm talking to a lot of my friends, and they're like, well, my work isn't fulfilling me. Like, how do you do it? She's like, do you think like taxes fulfill me? Like, do you think I just email people? And I'm like, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, work is just work. Work right now is just a means to an end, so then I can live my life outside of work.
Yeah, well, I don't want to, it doesn't just have to be a means to an end, though. And I think that's
Correct.
The point of what we're saying is that work is a sanctifying thing, and there are going to be parts of work that you really love, and there are going to be parts of work that you don't like at all. But you need to make that decision when you're sending out those tax emails. Am I going to choose to give? This is what's being asked of me right now. Like, there's no doubt in my mind, because I'm in the job that I'm in right now, there is absolutely no doubt that what I am called to do by God, because I am in this line of work, is to send out this email, is to have this conference call, is to do this thing. And so you need to approach all those things, whether you really enjoy them or you really don't enjoy them, with a sense of just like, of seeking excellence in the midst of what you're doing. But I think to Arthur Brooks' point, what he's saying is that a lot of times people get into a career that they might not love, and then they think to themselves, well, the only way that I'm going to find fulfillment is if I find a job that I fully love. and that perhaps uses all of my gifts and uses all my skills. And I'm not saying you shouldn't pursue a job where it's like I'm using my gifts. I'm doing the things that I love to do. I'm using my particular skill set. I feel like I'm growing. I feel like if you're not getting that in the workplace, you should think to yourself, maybe this isn't the right fit for me. Where do I feel like I could have the best fit and make the biggest impact because of the gifts and skills that God has given me? But I think what Arthur Brooks is saying is that you need to take some ownership over your life and recognize that work is just one of the many aspects, is that, working for the missionary organization Focus that we work for, there's a great calling within that, and it's particular because it's a form of ministry, but also at the same time, like I was saying earlier, I have family members who are sick. I have a wife and I have children, and frankly, it's a wake up call if you feel like you're setting all of these goals for your career and you're setting this trajectory that you have for your career, and then you get home and it's like your wife and kids are there waiting for you, and it's like, when's the last time? What do you want for your wife? What do you want for your children? What do you want for your family life? Can you build the life that you want where work is a big part of that? But again, it's just a part. It's not the entire thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was trying to get to. It's just a part of it, and no matter what it is, no matter if your job is your calling or not, you definitely have to figure out, what you were saying with integrating with God, right? Mm-hmm. With God's will for your life, with God's will for you today, I think St. Josemaria Escrivá talks a lot about this, mm-hmm. right? And I'm sure, John Michael, I know you have a big devotion that you could probably speak more into this. But I think it's no matter what your job is, you definitely have to tie that back in.
I think something that's helped me here is finding a career mentor. So when I say that, I mean, ideally someone who's, a couple steps ahead in their career. So maybe if you're starting your career, you're looking not at the next step up as someone to mentor, but someone who's in their, 20 years into their career, maybe even 30 years into their career. Someone who's wrestled with this a lot. I've had a couple different career mentors. My current one has been really insightful because he's worked for a variety of different organizations, which I find valuable. Something I feel like I'm lacking a little bit is I've worked for the same organization my whole life. Well, not my whole life, but my whole working life. And so there's a certain amount of kind of work experience I'm missing because I haven't worked for different types of cultures, different types of leadership styles. And he's allowed me to really get an outside perspective on my day-to-day work. Something he told me, which I would love to dive into this topic a little bit in our last few minutes together, but he said you always want to have an idea of where you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years in your career. And so you always want a job that has an off-ramp into another job. You never want to feel like the job that you're in is kind of a dead end. There's not a lot of movement, can't move up, can't really move side to side. And I've found that insightful, not from a corporate ladder climbing mindset, but just a forward thinking of, all right, if I didn't do this, how are the skills I'm learning preparing me for that next role? And I think guys our age are struggling a little bit with that because they need to see, okay, I want to have a career plan in place to know where I fit in my company in the next 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Any career advice you all have received there?
Well, I really like that, and it reminds me of a business owner that we know and love, Nick Bare.
Come on.
The founder and CEO of Bare Performance Nutrition. And one of the things that he's really big on is forward thinking and backwards planning. That you need to, the particular areas that he uses that are when you're planning your day, if you want to, wake up at this certain time, what is it going to require from you the night before? So you're always thinking ahead and thinking, what do I need to do to get there, and backwards plan from there. And I think that's really good advice, and similar to what this mentor of yours was telling you, is that you never want to be in a place where you feel stuck. You never want to be in a place where you're like, I don't know how I'm growing, how I'm developing, where I'm going, and I'm just kind of going with the current, if you will, and it's just kind of wherever the wind blows, I'm gonna end up, and I haven't really thought about what the next step in front of me in life is like.
Yeah, I think it's important for us in our late 20s, early 30s to be thinking about this, because life's only going to get more expensive. There's kids, and then there's more kids. As Jim Gaffigan said, having kids is like you're drowning and someone hands you a baby. that's kind of what it feels like in your late 20s, early 30s when you're grinding out the first 10 years of your career, and to always have a plan of like, all right, can I expand my salary? What could I do to provide some more resources as my family continues to grow, as the grocery budget continues to grow, and as our life experiences continue to grow? Always a great plan to have that moving forward.
Absolutely.
Well, I think to wrap us up, the ultimate calling that we all have is the calling to holiness, which is to perfectly align with and to adhere to the will of God. And the will of God for my life right now is to be the husband that I'm called to be the father that I'm called to be the friend and the family member that I'm called to be the employee that I'm called to be. And I need to constantly be looking and searching for ways of, how can I step into every situation and ordinary circumstance that God has given me in my life to be the man that God is asking me to be in those particular circumstances. And so one thing I know for sure is that everyone back home who's listening to this is very called to hit that like button, very called to comment, and to make a career of subscribing to this podcast and telling other people